we're going deep today into a world where you've got dollars and digital yuan kind of clashing, and Bitcoin maybe like the wild card.
Yeah.
Just kind of thrown in there in the deck.
Yeah.
You sent over some seriously interesting articles and analyses.
Yeah.
It seems like everyone's asking the same question these days. Is the dollar on its way out?
I think what's really interesting about this is this isn't just about sort of like economic theory.
Right, yeah.
This is a real world power struggle playing out. We've
Yeah.
got the US and China vying for dominance. And digital assets are becoming these key pieces on the chessboard.
And the BRICs expansion, adding like Saudi Arabia, UAE, Iran.
Right.
It feels like a major power move.
It is.
Almost like they're forming their own league, ready to play by a different set of rules.
Yeah, the timing is definitely noteworthy.
Yeah.
With all the tensions rising and sanctions becoming this go-to tactic,
Right.
these nations are actively seeking ways to reduce their reliance on the U.S.-dominated financial system.
It's like they're saying, hey, if you're going to weaponize the dollar,
Right.
we'll create our own financial weapons.
Exactly. And that's where things get really interesting.
Yeah.
The question is, what will those weapons look like?
Right.
Will it be a BRICs currency? A basket of currencies backed by commodities? Or will they turn to something completely different,
Yeah.
something outside the traditional system?
Like Bitcoin.
Potentially.
I mean, some of these sources paint it as a potential game changer.
Yeah.
A decentralized haven in a world of increasing financial control.
Bitcoin certainly has that potential to disrupt the status quo.
Yeah.
I mean, its decentralized nature, its resistance to censorship, and its ability to operate outside those traditional financial rails
Right.
make it a very attractive alternative, especially as trust in those institutions erodes.
But some experts, like Wharton professor Jeremy Siegel,
Right.
seem to think that Trump's support for Bitcoin could actually pose a bigger threat to the dollar than any BRICS initiative. How does that even make sense?
Well, if you think about it, Trump's stance creates this fascinating paradox.
Okay.
On the one hand, he's advocating for a decentralized, non-governmental asset like Bitcoin.
Right.
On the other, he's threatening tariffs on countries that try to abandon the dollar. It's like he's trying to control the game while simultaneously disrupting it.
It's almost like he's inadvertently pushing people towards Bitcoin.
Right.
Like, hey, if you don't want to deal with my tariffs or the dollar's volatility, here's this other option that no one can control.
Exactly.
Not even me.
And that's where things get really interesting from a geopolitical perspective. You know, could this unintended consequence actually accelerate the adoption of Bitcoin?
Okay, let's back up for a second because I'm sensing a potential knowledge gap here.
Okay.
Not everyone listening might be familiar with the whole dollar dominance backstory.
Right.
Like, how did it even get to this point where the dollar holds so much power?
Yeah, it's a fascinating story, and it really sets the stage for understanding what's happening now. You see, after World War II, the Bretton Woods Agreement essentially crowned the dollar as the world's reserve currency.
So everyone pegged their currencies to the dollar.
Yeah.
Which was at that time linked to gold.
Exactly.
It was the golden age of the dollar, literally.
Literally. But that system started to crumble in the 1970s when the U.S. abandoned the gold standard.
And yet the dollar held onto its power, right? It became linked to oil through the petrodollar system, further solidifying its dominance in international trade.
Right. But as we're seeing now, that dominance is being challenged.
Yeah.
The rise of the BRICS nations,
Right.
the weaponization of sanctions, the emergence of digital assets.
Yeah.
All of these factors are creating a perfect storm that could potentially reshape the global financial landscape.
And this brings us back to China and their digital yuan strategy.
Yeah.
Because let's be honest, they're not just sitting back and watching this play out, are they?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
They're making some pretty aggressive moves of their own.
They recognize the potential of digital currencies to shift the balance of power, and they're playing a very strategic game.
All right, so let's break down China's game plan and explore how the digital yuan fits into their grand strategy. We'll dive deeper into that right after this.
China's approach to digital currency is fascinating.
Yeah.
It's like this duality.
Right.
On one hand, you have them cracking down on decentralized cryptocurrencies, like Bitcoin, seemingly out of concern for financial stability and control.
Right.
But then on the other hand,
Yeah.
they've poured resources into developing their own central bank digital currency,
Right.
the digital yuan, which they can totally control.
It's like they want the benefits of blockchain,
Right.
but without giving up any power.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're aiming to create this system where they can monitor transactions, track spending patterns, even control how and where the money is used.
Right.
This level of control could be really powerful,
Yeah.
for managing their economy and potentially even influencing global markets.
So while we in the West are kind of grappling with the implications of decentralized finance, China is building a system that reinforces centralized control.
Right.
It's almost like two totally different visions for the future of money.
Yeah, and those visions are colliding in the global arena.
Right.
As China promotes the digital yuan in international trade and these cross-border settlements, it directly challenges the dollar's dominance.
One of the sources you sent over mentioned that they're even developing these hard wallets for like offline digital yuan payments, specifically targeting countries with limited internet access.
Yeah.
They're clearly thinking long-term and strategically.
This outreach to developing nations is particularly interesting.
Yeah.
By offering a digital currency that kind of bypasses the need for traditional banking infrastructure, China can position itself as a financial leader in regions where the U.S. has historically held sway.
It's like they're offering an alternative path to financial inclusion, one that doesn't rely on the existing Western-dominated system.
Exactly.
But let's be real, this isn't just about altruism.
Right.
There's a geopolitical power play at work here.
Undoubtedly, China's digital yuan strategy aligns with their broader Belt and Road Initiative, which aims to expand their economic and political influence across the globe.
Right.
The digital yuan could become a key tool in achieving those ambitions.
So it's not just a currency, it's a strategic asset, a way to project power and kind of reshape global financial dynamics.
Right.
But what does this all mean for Bitcoin?
Right.
If the U.S. and China are both pushing their own digital agendas, where does that leave a decentralized cryptocurrency like Bitcoin?
That's the million-dollar question. I think some believe that this competition could actually benefit Bitcoin as governments assert greater control over their own digital currencies.
Right.
Individuals and businesses seeking financial privacy and autonomy might flock to Bitcoin as this neutral alternative.
It's like that old saying, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. If the U.S. and China are viewed as rivals in this digital currency space, Bitcoin could emerge as the Switzerland of finance.
Exactly. It could become a safe haven for those who don't want to be caught in the crossfire of this geopolitical battle.
But there's also the risk that governments seeing Bitcoin as a threat to their own digital currencies might try to crack down on it even harder.
Right.
We've already seen some countries take steps to restrict or regulate cryptocurrencies.
That's a valid concern. The future of Bitcoin likely hinges on how governments choose to respond to its growing adoption.
Right.
Will they embrace it as a complement to their own digital currencies, or will they view it as a competitor to be controlled or even eliminated?
This brings up another question that keeps popping up in these sources. We've talked about how BRICs nations are looking for ways to move away from the dollar.
Right.
Could Bitcoin actually become part of their strategy?
It's certainly a possibility. Remember, the BRICS alliance isn't this monolithic entity.
Right.
Each nation has its own interests and motivations.
Yeah.
While some might be wary of Bitcoin's decentralized nature, others might see it as a valuable tool for reducing reliance on the U.S. financial system.
Especially with the U.S. threatening tariffs and using sanctions as a weapon.
Right.
Bitcoin's ability to circumvent those traditional levers of power makes it a pretty tempting option for nations seeking to assert their independence.
And it's not just about governments.
Right.
Individuals and businesses within those countries might turn to Bitcoin as a way to protect their assets from currency fluctuations and economic instability. We're already seeing this happen in countries experiencing hyperinflation or political turmoil.
So the more the U.S. tries to enforce its financial dominance, the more it might inadvertently push people towards alternatives like Bitcoin. It's a classic case of unintended consequences.
It really is. And this brings us back to the key takeaway here. The battle for global economic supremacy is no longer just about traditional currencies and trade agreements. It's about controlling the very infrastructure of finance.
Right.
The networks and technologies that determine how money moves and who holds the power.
And in this new battleground, digital assets like Bitcoin are emerging as powerful weapons, capable of disrupting the old order and reshaping the balance of power. It's a wild ride.
It is.
And it feels like we're just getting started. Okay, so we've got this financial arms race kind of heating up.
Yeah.
The U.S. clinging to the dollar, China pushing its digital yuan,
Right.
and Bitcoin kind of lurking in the shadows, waiting to see who blinks first.
Yeah, the digital Wild West out there.
It really is. And one of the things I keep coming back to is this whole idea of trust, or maybe the lack of it.
Right.
If you can't trust the dollar because of sanctions and volatility,
Yeah.
and you're kind of wary of the digital yuan because of that government control, where do you turn?
Well, that's where the appeal of decentralized assets like Bitcoin comes in. It's not about trusting any particular government or institution.
Yeah.
It's about trusting the technology itself.
Yeah.
The underlying cryptography
Right.
and the decentralized network that secures it.
It's almost like going back to a more fundamental form of money.
Right.
One based on math and code rather than political whims or central bank policies.
And that shift in trust is having real-world implications.
Yeah.
I mean, look at how some countries are exploring the use of Bitcoin for international settlements or as a reserve asset.
Right.
They're looking for ways to diversify their holdings and reduce their exposure to the vulnerabilities of the current system.
It's like they're hedging their bets.
Exactly.
Recognizing that the future of finance might not be dominated by a single currency or controlled by a handful of powerful nations.
And this brings us back to the BRICs alliance.
Right.
While they haven't officially embraced Bitcoin, it's not hard to imagine a scenario where they start to integrate it into their financial strategies. Yeah.
Even if it's just as a way to exert more leverage in negotiations with the West.
Especially if they see it as a way to circumvent sanctions.
Right.
Or reduce their reliance on the SWIFT system, which is currently dominated by the U.S. and its allies.
Exactly. The more the U.S. uses financial sanctions as a tool of foreign policy, the more it incentivizes other nations to explore those alternatives.
Yeah.
Whether it's the digital yuan Bitcoin or some other innovation we haven't even considered yet.
It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
It is.
The very actions the U.S. is taking to maintain its dominance might be accelerating its decline.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
It is.
It's kind of terrifying.
A little bit.
Yeah.
The key takeaway for anyone trying to navigate this landscape is to stay informed.
Right.
Be adaptable. And embrace the fact that change is inevitable. The financial world is undergoing a pretty profound transformation.
Yeah.
And the only certainty is that things will continue to evolve in unexpected ways.
So what's our final thought for the listeners?
What's the one thing they should keep in mind as they watch this whole financial power struggle unfold?
I think it's this. Don't underestimate the power of ideas.
Okay.
In the digital age, ideas can spread like wildfire, and they can have a profound impact on how we organize ourselves, how we do business, and even how we define value.
Yeah.
Bitcoin is more than just a technology. It's an idea.
Okay.
A powerful idea that challenges the status quo and forces us to rethink the very nature of money and power.
Right.
Whether it succeeds or fails in the long run, it's clear that it has already changed the game.
And that's what makes this whole deep dive so compelling. Thanks for joining me on this journey into the heart of the global financial system. We'll be back soon with another deep dive into the topics that matter most. Until then, stay curious.